All right, number 8, Alabama, 13.5-point favorite on the road against Florida State. Over under I have is 293 yards of offense for Florida State. Will, I got you laughing again. What's up?
The more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm just imagining Alabama drubbing Florida State at opener.
All right, we're gonna spoil the pick. That's fine.
I'm talking about my pick. What you mean? Yeah,
I know. Yeah, that's fine. I'll get to why I'm going to disagree with you on that one. But 293, that number, the total offense for Florida State, that was the most that Florida State had in a game against FBS competition last year. What game was that, you ask? It was week 1 against Boston College. They had already lost week 0, and then they lose that game to week 1. A certain promise of eating feces was then not delivered and may or may not have, but definitely did curse Florida State's season after that. But that was significant because it was a 13-point effort from Florida State in a losing effort against a certain Thomas Castellanos. That's ancient history and not relevant now because Castellanos is running the show at Florida State. According to Mike Norvell, relevant history does include Gus Malzahn's track record as an offensive coordinator 15 years ago. According to Castellanos, relevant history does not include Alabama last year when it had its best scoring defense in 7 years. No Nick Saban, clearly no chance that Alabama stops Scrappy Doo. For the what is he supposed to say crowd, and I've seen some of that going into this game in week 1 who might have missed the comments that one Thomas Castellanos made to On3. This is not about, like your quarterback should lack confidence and he should just be totally quiet. What you don't do is give a proven defense an entire summer to have bulletin board material and say, I just don't see them stopping me. I do. I see Alabama stopping Thomas Castellanos. Maybe not for all 4 quarters. I don't want to disrespect him in that way. Lord knows Alabama had issues with mobile quarterbacks at times last year. I'm not going to pretend like they have just all of a sudden figured that out. And maybe a new look Florida State offense with Gus Malzahn comes out firing and ready to go, and the home crowd is into it, and everybody's feeling like, wow, this is a new year for Florida State. But I'm just not sold on an entirely new look group having the upper hand for 60 minutes. FSU might have 9 transfers starting on offense in this game. 9. That is a lot. You are really banking on being able to keep a team on its heels and having continuity from the jump. With
Mike Norvell's got it right where he wants to. That's the perfect Mike Norvell team.
Perfect Mike Norvell team might start with transfers, but it's at least gotten some time to figure things out and figure out who they were. Like that 23 team built largely on transfers. They had 22 to be able to figure it out. A lot of those guys were there in 21 as well. It's like it's just a little bit different when we're talking about these guys are playing in their first game in a Florida State uniform. And I just tend to think that's not going to bode well for an entirety of a 60-minute game. I think Bama should have everything it needs to take care of business in this one. Quietly, I think Ryan Grubb's got a lot to prove in this game. We haven't really dug into why he was one and done with the Seahawks. And it was just so quickly, when's the reunion's going to happen with Kalen DeBoer? But Ryan Grubb is trying to rebuild his image as one of the elite offensive minds in football. And he got fired because he didn't scheme well enough in the ground game. And it became a major point of contention with the Seahawks, who didn't have to worry about that with Pete Carroll. And a lot of time it was, hey, let Russ cook. You're running the football too much. And all of a sudden it was, man, we don't run the football well enough. And that really plagued that Seahawks team. And that's why he was in and out there. We know that 2023 Washington was a sling it all over the yard unit with Michael Penix and 3 NFL receivers. Like they could do that. They didn't need to have this ground and pound type attack. And you know what? This Bama team has been praised for its offensive line. I think praised a little bit too much, in my opinion. But now you enter the season with real questions at running back after Jam Miller is going to be out for the foreseeable future. It looks like the first few weeks. Maybe he's going to return for that Georgia game. Richard Young had the most carries of any returning Alabama back, and he had 27, half of which came against non-power conference foes. Maybe Daniel Hill, maybe Louisiana transfer, Dre Washington, maybe those guys are going to pop in this first game, and all of a sudden we're going to be going, oh, Bama's just got another one. But you've got a quarterback in Ty Simpson starting for the first time in his career in what will be a hostile atmosphere, perhaps also similar conditions to what he saw a couple years ago in that disastrous second half he had against South Florida, where that we had a rain delay in that one. Could be similar because it's August in Florida, and that type of thing happens in the middle of the afternoon here.
Yep.
Don't I know it? You need to be able to punch FSU in the mouth if you're Bama. You need to be able to run the football. I think Grubb finds a way to do that. I think it's a little bit sloppier than some are expecting. Maybe not the game in which Ryan Williams establishes himself as one of the 4 best players in college football. I think Bama ultimately wins 28-17, so not quite covering the spread.
You know what's so funny about this game? It's like we have all this data, but it all could, like, it's almost too much. It's like, okay, well, we have last year, but Jalen Milroe is not here anymore, so that doesn't matter. It's like, well, we have the NFL stuff, but that also doesn't really matter. And FSU, it's like, well, we have what Norvell has been, but that's been completely night and day. And then we have Gus Malzahn. I guess to your point, maybe we could look at the high school stuff at Arkansas. Like, I don't know. That was during like the first Bush term. Like, I don't know.
Springdale. Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know. Like, these teams could show up and you could tell me 1,000 different realities. I would say about 800 of them still have Alabama winning. And I would say of those, the majority are still pretty comfortably. But I will say this, and you did hit on something we can kind of grab onto here. Establishing the run game. We know Alabama doesn't have like that factor back. Oh, this is really gripping analysis. Well, you got to run the football. But that being said, Ty Simpson can be a little bit of a dual threat guy. But you talked about that USF game last year. I'll tell you, if
2
I
years
could
ago.
just, or sorry, yep, 2 years ago. If I could just fantasy draft someone to not be in that style of game again against, it is Gus Malzahn. That is my only word of advice here for Bama fans, which is score early, get the deficit up, like play prevent, basically, not prevent, you know what I'm saying, but just nurse that lead, because you don't want to be in a back and forth game, because Gus will start feeling a little bit of that Toby Keith going on. He'll start drawing stuff up. Suddenly he'll be early career Josh Heupel the first drive, and you're like, what is this? This is like a go route. And so point being, I think that the physical, like, again, Alabama can lean on their physicality on defense. That is what they were last year. If anything else, that's what we could look at, is that Alabama still has some dudes on defense with a lot of pride. The spats on the field are over with. You know, they've all kind of bought in under one leader in Kane Womack. And so I think that basically Castellanos is a little bit smaller of a quarterback. He's the type of guy that you want to get in his face early, frustrate him, basically just collapse the pocket around him. I know he can be a little bit more mobile, and he would tell you that would probably be where he succeeds the best, but I think he's not seen this level of talent before. It's one thing to have guys in, you know, these different conferences that he's played in kind of chasing you around, but having these dudes from Alabama is just a completely different story. Until you see, you know, the creature from Alabama coming at you, you can't really prepare for it. So that being said, I think that Alabama needs to take some risks on defense, because they're a sound unit there, right? They're a blitz-happy defense, but against this level of, I hate to say disorganization, but I don't know what else you could call it at FSU the last couple of years. Let's not make this into a game, y'all. This should be a blowout, and let's keep it moving.
I don't look at FSU's transfer additions as, wow, that changes the trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's going to elevate the floor. I was once a squirrel white believer. It's hard for me to picture him going off against Bama when I watched the last 2 years against Tennessee with an elite offensive mind in Josh Heupel, who did a couple of better things at UCF than one Gus Malzahn did, but we don't have to discuss that. With all due respect to Roydell Williams and what's going to be a revenge game for him against his former Alabama team, there was a reason why he left for Florida State. And if he's able to stay healthy this year, who knows? Like, maybe he's going to have his moments, but it's hard for me to look at those additions that they've made on offense with how bad they were last year and just think, oh, well, Gus is going to make it work. It's really hard to picture that. And this comes down to dudes. I don't know that FSU has the dudes. I don't. If they're 2-10 this year, again, I'll be stunned, just because you just can't be as bad as you were last year with how inept they were on offense. I mean, I was looking back at some of the numbers, and my God, pour one out for DJU.
If we could just give him another year, he'd show us something, I'll tell you.
Get him back with Oregon State, Jonathan Smith, and an offensive line that can protect him, and he'll be all right for you. But the situation last year at FSU was not exactly one that did him any favors, and he did not do FSU any favors. I just don't see the path to FSU ground and pound 60 minutes doing this against Bama. And if that all of a sudden, if that possibility opens up and Kalen DeBoer loses to an unranked team for the 4th time during his Alabama tenure, yeesh, he's got a ton of pressure on him to take care of business in this game. Or else people like me who have banged the drum that this guy knows what he's doing, he's going to figure things out, there will be people going, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to work through this, because this is a game that you have to show up and win.
Absolutely. And one quick thing on the transfers. It's funny. Norvell has actually built the team that I think people accuse Deion Sanders of building, which is like, you don't recruit high school, you just get transfers. I have a lot of respect for what they did. I've been very complimentary for FSU, especially because they smoked LSU twice and I was at both of them. But that being said, having these kind of inspirational stories, right? Jordan Travis, Jared Verse, Keon Coleman. Okay, that's cool. But you still have to have a structurally sound football team. And those guys are kind of what takes it over the edge. When you're counting on, we say 9 transfers to all pop and all have a second life and all be a different player than they were somewhere else. Like, that's kind of what we've arrived on with transfers. Is all we can say guys got a bad deal. We can say all this, but their initial plan didn't work. And when you got 9 guys whose initial plan didn't work, and that's what they have in common, who's to say their second plan is going to work? That's all I got to say. So maybe it will work in a couple of weeks, but week 1 against Alabama, probably not the time to figure that out.
Yes.